What's up? Hello. Oh, there she is.
Hello. What's
There she
up? Oh,
blows.
that was it.
What's up, y'all?
Hello, everybody.
Happy
How is
Friday.
it?
All right, we're just gonna hang out for a couple minutes. Or, we could just talk
Yeah.
about how things are going right now. And then I'll wait a little bit to do an intro for you or have you talk about yourself. Dude, did you see my posts that I made
Yeah,
earlier today?
I just saw them earlier. I was
I
like,
was
okay,
I
okay,
was
I look
like,
glowing. I look good.
she said I look good. That was the feedback. She's a Leo, you guys. If anyone was wondering, if
I
it's not,
really appreciate the kind words though, because I was like, okay, hyping me up.
she said I look good. I look good.
I was like, I
That was the
did,
feedback in
yeah.
the posts. No, because when I was writing it out, I was like, damn, if I wrote everything down that she has under her belt, this would just take up like multiple pages. So I was just like, you definitely got to talk about all the things
Yeah,
you
there's just
do.
so many. I feel like there's just so many different levels to, like, I wouldn't say levels, but different like areas of work that you can do with like mental health and like trauma. And I feel like I've had different roles that there's so much.
You've been around the block a few times.
I'm like, I don't
Been
know if
around the
that's like a good
blocks.
thing or a bad thing. Like, she can't be committed or consistent or.
No, but you're like productive about it because it's like you've been through it, but then you also do something about you being
That's
through
the,
it. Because some people they just
yeah.
like they go, and it's nothing bad if no one has a responsibility in going using what they've gone through to help
Mm-hmm.
others. Like everyone heals at their own pace and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. But I've always been super impressed at how you like go through it and then you figure out how can you help other people with what you've been through because not I don't have that capacity all the time. A lot of times I have to wait till I'm like fully healed to be able to feel like I can help people.
Yeah, like I remember, I think it was when I was like 18 or 19, my first role like at a sexual assault center as a volunteer crisis like hotline person. And I remember when I was going through the training and just like listening to, sexual assault and all of that, like just prevention and all that. I remember I was just thinking like, I didn't even know this existed. Like, had I known that centers like this existed in like my community, maybe my family would have been better, maybe I would have been better, or I would have been able to use those resources. And I was like, I want
Mm,
to be a part of it, or like I want to be able to be one of those people who are like presenting or like teaching
yeah.
people.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's so young too to be involved in
Mhm.
things like that. 19 years old.
Mhm.
Oh man. So hey to everyone that's been jumping in so far. Happy Friday. Hope everyone has been having a good week and thanks for joining in on a Friday night before y'all go out and get lit. Let's talk about mental health.
Actually, I'm asleep tonight.
Go sleep good tonight. Um, what's it called? So I want to just ask you a little bit more about your background and have you talk about your background because even though we've been best friends for how many years now, I don't even know. Oh, hey, I'm Frühling. How do you say?
Hello.
Can somebody with a German background confirm how you would say, is it Frühling? Do you roll your R? Anyway, yeah, I know that you have such an extensive background in like is it family and social services, right?
Yeah.
That was your
Family.
major. What
So
was your degree?
my major was family and individual development, and it's it's a step towards like family and marriage therapy. But when the time came when I graduated, I just wasn't in the place to pursue therapy.
Mm,
But yeah, it's family social services where you can work for the government, work for a nonprofit, or even do your own thing with community education and help and services and stuff like that. So
yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So it's like you said earlier, the word and the term mental health gets thrown around so much. It's such a buzzword these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing, I think, I don't know if you can agree, but with the rise of social media and like, conversations happening in on platforms, like public platforms, there's been a lot more highlight and focus on mental health. But then, there are all these different buzzwords, and it's like sometimes it's like, what does that even
Mm-hmm.
mean? What is the definition of that, and what are the different facets and kind of like
Mm-hmm.
subcategories of mental health? Like, what are we actually
Mm-hmm.
talking about when we talk about mental health? So we'll definitely be getting into all of that. But for now, can you just tell us a little bit about just your background and how you got into doing what you're doing? What up, Jeno?
Ooh, Jeno. So when I was younger, I I definitely had those thoughts of just I wanted to be a creative person. I wanted to be an artist in some capacity. But with everything that was going on with me when I was like a kid, it took so much, it took so much out of me, the trauma, the everything that I was experiencing with my family, the abuse. There was no space for me to really express myself or be able to pursue any of that creativity. So when I was in high school, like middle school, high school is when like my mental illnesses and just like the manifestations of my trauma started showing. And it was through like my behavior, and it was through going through these depressive episodes of either sleeping all the time, overeating, having issues with, self-harm and stuff like that. And probably when I was 17, I realized like what is the most important thing for me? What's something that I really want to do? And that was to create. But I didn't know how important it would be to actually be okay in my mind to I felt like I was a writer, so I felt like the only way that I can make sense of everything that I was experiencing was through writing. And that's still something that's very true for me and a lot of the things that I do. But I feel like when I started going to school for writing and creative writing, I went to Columbia College in Chicago. And I just felt like there was a part of me that was missing, that if I were to show up for myself, if I were to be a creative in the capacity that I wanted to be, I would have there was a part of me that was missing, and it was the part that um I didn't know how could I be of service to others? How could I how could I do what I love doing while still being able to connect with other people? And that was when I found out about social services, and I found out that that was like working in psychology and working in mental health, but it wasn't just about the science. I like more of the behavioral part of working in mental health. I'm not very science and math inclined at all, but when it comes to behavioral stuff and learning about the dynamics of family and learning about how your upbringing can really affect your mental health and how you interact with the world, I realized that that was a part of me that was missing because I neglected so much of what I needed. Growing up, I realized that I wanted to be able to provide that for other people with whatever it was that I was studying. So when I got into like social services and stuff like that, I looked into ways that I could either volunteer in my community or, do like education and workshops in my community, whether it be at my university at the time or at a sexual assault center that I was working at back in Illinois. But yeah, I've worked in mental health facilities with children who were experiencing mental illness and had conduct disorders. And I've also worked in sexual assault centers, working with children up into adulthood, up into adults who are experiencing domestic violence and sexual assault. So a lot of the times, like I was, obviously you're exposed to a lot of these traumatic things and a lot of these things that other people might sweep under the rug or not want to look at. But that was there was just something in me that felt like it was like finding the truth. It was like finding like all of the things that people sweep under the rug, like working in that field felt honest to me. It felt like something that was just very genuine and very raw to be a part of.
Mm.
Because you think like every time I tell people, yeah, I've worked in like trauma, I've worked in domestic violence and stuff like that, just like they get scared or they get kind of like it's just kind of daunting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very daunting to think about working with the basically the dark parts of, you know, what people are going through, a lot of the traumatic things that people experience, because obviously there's a lot of confidentiality when it comes to working in these centers. Like, you can't tell anybody who's come to you for services, who's reached out for help and stuff like that. So I feel like being a part of that field gave me a sense of honesty, and it gave me a sense of being a part of something that other people might look the other way or might be too afraid to engage with. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, dude, that's really unique and powerful, because I feel like there are very few people who are faced with not only trauma, you know, growing up, and ongoing trauma and the effects of that, and want to actually like go into it and go
Mm-hmm.
into that darkness and
Mm-hmm.
figure it out, you know, and try to understand like what it means and heal from it. Because um, there are others, me included, where it's like they just want, like you said, want to look the other way, or just try to keep marching on and
Mm-hmm.
try to sweep things under the rug. I'm not gonna lie, like that has been my first instinct with my
Mm-hmm.
experience as well. And I know, as you know, that's not a very sustainable way of
Mm-hmm.
going through life at all. And so I love that you talked about when that sort of pivotal moment or pivotal point in time when you went from creative writing and became interested in social services, and the reasoning for
Mm-hmm.
that, because it sounds like you doing pursuing creative writing at that point, it sounds like you wanted your creativity to have a meaningful
Mm-hmm.
impact of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you weren't just doing it because it's fun or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but is that, was that the case? Like you wanted your
Yeah,
work to have some
so
meaning to it?
it's definitely still on my bucket list to write a book. I still love writing so much. I feel like I get so moved whenever I read, you know, just, you know, when you find something that just makes you feel something. I feel like I still feel that way about writing. I haven't been as active with like recreational writing. I'll still journal, or I'll still, like, you know, write poems and stuff like that, but I'm not as active as I used to be. But I feel like writing was, at the time when I was like 17, 18, it was definitely my way of creative expression. It was my way of being able to you know, understand what was going on the inside, and it was the only thing that felt so honest and raw to me. But when it came to a point when I was maybe 19 or 20, you know, when you're younger, you think you could take on the world. And at
Mhm.
that time, I felt like it just slapped me in the face, where it was like, if you're going to pursue writing, you need to be okay on the inside. You need to figure out how you want to be of service of the world. Like, what place do I want in this world before I go after writing? And I think I'm still kind of in that place, but I felt like at that time, social services was just calling to me, and being
Mhm.
able to be a part of that community was calling to me. And I felt like it was a strength that I've always had. And I remember even when I was like a kid, like I wanted to be a therapist, or I wanted to be like a psychologist, because human behavior and just the way that, you know, this human experience is so interesting to study. But like I said, when you're actually in the field and you see these things, you kind of learn, like you kind of gauge, like, okay, what what place do I have in this field? And that was where I learned that I personally don't have the capacity to work directly with survivors anymore. Like, I don't have the capacity to be that therapist, to be that person that directly supports
Mhm.
um you know, survivors who come to whatever center or wherever I was working. And that my passion lied in like education and being a part of presentations, or being a part of movements, and just hosting events and stuff like that.
Right. No, and you're so good at it. It's honestly such a natural ability for you, because I feel like it's one of those things, and you know, we've talked about this, but it's like what are the things that if somebody were to come up to you at a party or at a networking event, you know, that you could talk about for 5, 10, 15 minutes, an hour with little to no preparation. And for you,
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like that's just anything related to mental health and
I
um,
try, girl, I try.
trauma informed. Okay, she's gonna try. She be doing
Yeah.
it. She doing it.
Like,
So,
sometimes I feel like when I'm like out, sometimes when I talk to other people, and I guess like sometimes naturally, you know, when you meet someone and like you just automatically feel like you could just tell them everything. Like I always catch myself in those situations where people will start trauma dumping on me or just start like talking to me about stuff. But then I'm just like, but that's how it's crazy to think about how seldom people don't have the opportunity to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
give them
like it
space. Give them
like
space because of how open you are
yeah,
about.
like there's so much power in genuinely asking your friends like how are you doing? Like are you taking care of yourself? Like what's going on? And it's not like they have to tell you everything going on, but sometimes you'll have friends who are literally just like I haven't sat down and actually like thought about how I'm doing or thought about like the state of my mental health until you actually asked me because I don't think about it. I neglect it I neglect it. I don't think about it. So there's just a lot of power in asking, genuinely asking someone like, "How are you doing? Like, are you taking care of yourself?" You know?
Yeah. What does that mean though when, you ask someone how they're doing? Because there's a lot of that in society. It's a nicety at this point where you passing somebody in the hall and it's just like, hi, how are you? Good, how are you? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like the point of even communicating or interacting with each other at that
Yeah.
point when it's just like we're
Well,
just saying like empty words. So how do
yeah.
you truly ask someone how they're doing and then how do you truly respond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, I've always hated, I've always hated the question like, "How are you?" And like, she's like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good." But like inside, I'm
Right.
like, I'm trying not to cry. But I feel like when those interactions happen, where it just naturally feels like you're meant to be in that moment, and someone is checking in on you, like you can naturally be like, okay, like I haven't been okay. And a lot of this will happen with like friends that you're not super close to, but you know, like you, it's kind of like that pivotal moment of friendships. I feel like always happens for me is like I may not talk to this person as often, but I actually found a moment in time to be able to just slow down and be like, "So, like, how are you doing?" They're like, "You know what? Actually, someone hasn't asked me that. Like, I haven't actually had this conversation in a while." And like, there's a difference between having those conversations that are just like, "Oh, how are you doing?" Like, "Oh, I'm good." Like, whatever. It's just casual. But like being able to have that conversation, like sitting down with someone and saying, like, you know, I like a friend who might have been struggling, you know, it's hard to open that conversation, but just being like, you know, I'm here for you. Like, I genuinely care about you. I noticed that you've been struggling a little bit. Like, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that you need from me? You know,
Mhm.
just like being able to be that person to have that open and safe space is so important. And just think, what would you want out of, like, what kind of interaction would you want if someone were to genuinely ask you how you were doing and you felt that they genuinely cared about you? Like, what kind of support would you want from that person? And then how can you provide that for somebody else, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's interesting to think about, because like, like you and I are both on the same page with the how are you doings, and it's like at that point I would rather just not even interact if we're not going to have a real conversation about it. But I like that you sort of like kind of just elaborated on framing how you can further go into the how are you doing? Like, are you taking care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself? Are you
Mm-hmm.
getting enough sleep? Like, what's been going on, right? And like, I think staying curious and expressing that curiosity in a more
Mm-hmm.
genuine
I
way
think
sounds like the
I think
key.
one of the most I feel a lot of like I don't know how to explain this. Like I feel a lot of pain sometimes when I speak to somebody and I can tell that like they haven't taken that time to really check in with themselves or like see how they're actually doing. And then whenever I do sit down with them and I can tell them like, you know, I know what it's like to feel like you can't tell anyone what's going on with you. Like I know what it's like to feel like you have to hide, but like I promise you like you're not alone. And just having those genuine just words of affirmations, you know, is just like it's so powerful when it comes to interacting with people that you don't normally sit down and have those deep conversations with, you know. And a lot of people are very scared or like a lot, it's just not normal to go up to somebody and be like, yeah, I'm not okay, you know what I mean? Like being vulnerable is very hard. It's very hard to be vulnerable. And I think like when you can naturally find yourself in that situation with somebody where they can be vulnerable with you, like that's a privilege. It's such a privilege to be able to be in a space with someone who can be vulnerable with you.
Yeah, and you know what? I gotta hype you up, and I know your Leo ass is gonna love it. I'm just kidding. But I really, that's like the biggest thing that I admire and respect about you is because you wear vulnerability like nobody else that I've ever seen or known, because you talk about a lot of the hard things with your platform, which let's get into that, you know, with both your podcast and the content that you create. No bias, just because you're my best friend and no bullshit. Like, I really don't see anybody speaking at the level of rawness and vulnerability that you do. I feel like the tone that you take in your content and in your podcast feels the same as when how we're talking right now, and when I FaceTime with you, and when I have like just one-on-one conversations with you. And so how do you, because I know it's not easy. I know
Sorry, the dog next door is going crazy. If you could hear it,
it's a it's good.
she'll stop.
But oh, there's Rocky. But
I wonder why that's happening.
I'll protect you, Mom. So how do you have any tips on how you can approach vulnerability and, you know, talking about not being okay? Because, you know, with social media is such a highlight reel and such a curated sort of like look at my fun and polished sunny life, when you, on the other hand, you're so okay with being like, today was shitty. Like, you'll start off your podcast episodes sometimes like, I've been in a really shitty mood this week, and here's how I've been dealing with it. You don't see a lot of people talking like that.
Even this morning when I came up to you, I was like, I was triggered and I was crying.
Yeah,
I was cried. No, but wait, what was your question again?
How tips on vulnerability,
okay.
especially like in the social media space, and just, I guess, how you present, like when you're with people, but also with how you present yourself, your online presence, and in your content. Like, so, I know, because I know it's not necessarily easy for you, right? So like, how do you get over that?
It's so scary to think about sharing the stories that I share. Sharing the stories that I share online, because number one, I know my family could see it anytime they want to. I know that like my partner's family could see it whenever they want to. It's so scary to think about opening that part of yourself that literally only the closest people in my life really know about. And it's not like I'm over here just spilling the beans, telling every detail. Like I share what I feel comfortable with, like anyone else should. You know what I mean? Like, and I think social media has, especially like Instagram culture, has really painted this idea of what your life is supposed to look like. And what I really did was separate my ego and separate my, like, just basically set my intentions behind whatever it is I'm posting. And the one thing that I always tell myself is there's a difference between posting things for celebration and posting things for validation. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many people who, and you'll see this, you'll know people, like you'll see them on Instagram, they're, and a lot of times for me personally, like I'll ghost on social media. Like, I won't post if I'm not feeling well. But when it comes to being vulnerable on social media, it's just a matter of making sure that what you're posting comes from a place with the intention to be genuine and to, you know, like, what's your intention behind what you're posting? You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of like the fake or perfect things that you see in the highlights that you see on Instagram are mostly like they'll either fall in the category of validation or celebration, and you could always tell, like, you know, you can tell.
Yeah.
But I definitely separated. I learned, it's still an active thing, like learning to separate your ego from anything that you do. Because I'm just like, okay, if I'm going to share a story about what I'm going through, what's my intention? Like, do I want people to empathize with what I'm going through, or do I want to share this so that other people don't feel alone? You know, and sometimes there is such thing as, you know, I do believe there's such thing as oversharing when it comes to being vulnerable, and I've done it before. It's very easy to do when you're kind of in that space of, oh, I want to like help everybody, I want to share my story. But at the same time, there are times where I've had to delete my own post because I'm like, okay, I don't think I was ready to share that part of myself with other people. And yeah, I'd say just like my number one tip is just to really look at your intention behind what you're posting. And some people get so caught up in what they want their life to look like on social media, and how they want to present themselves on social media. And you just have to think of it, the way I see it is just like some people just aren't in that place yet to be able to sit back and be like, what's real and what isn't real, like what matters and what doesn't matter. And like you said, like social media can either be a tool or someone or other people might use it for harm. And what side do you want to be on when it comes to posting and when it comes to being vulnerable and sharing those kinds of stories, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that you can basically, there's a spectrum to it, but social media can either be something that you use as a healthy tool, or it could be something that aids in your own like self-destruction and self-sabotaging, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it can definitely be a way that, yeah, you just enable unhealthy habits and mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that, you know, you're honest just now about, you know, sometimes it did feel like that was a little bit oversharing. So then you'll go back and delete a post or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
is there sort of a litmus test or a guideline that you use for yourself personally, when it comes to trying to gauge whether you want to share something and be vulnerable, or whether that's oversharing? Like, you know, I know
Yeah,
it's different for everyone.
sometimes I feel like when I'm afraid that I'm oversharing, it's also because of my ego that I'm like, I don't want people to know that that happened to me. But at the same time, I felt like that story was necessary to share or
Mm,
necessary to have people relate to what I was going through. But it's just, and it's also because like with having like BPD and stuff like that, like there's a lot of impulsivity too. Like sometimes I'll have an idea and I'll want to share like every detail and be like, um, and share every detail. And then afterwards I find out like, okay, that wasn't really necessary. I didn't have to like go like all in with a couple of the stories I was talking about. But for me, my limit, I feel like the limit that I set myself to is, what do I just do I feel comfortable sharing this? It's pretty, it's just simple. It's just, do I feel comfortable sharing this? Do I feel like it's necessary to share my piece of thought? And I feel like right now we're in a world where everyone thinks their 2 cents matters. And it's not saying that your voice doesn't matter. It's just saying if everyone is sharing what they're feeling and what they believe is true, how do you know what's actually true and what's real? If everyone is sharing, you know, every
oh,
piece of information, every opinion that they have. So I feel like I'm just very, I'm a little more selective, I feel like, than I used to be when it comes to what I want to share. And like, what point of view do I want to share from? Like, one of the biggest things that you learn in like trauma informed healing and trauma informed training is to understand how to be a neutral baseline, like how to be a person that can support others while still being true to themselves,
mm,
rather than being a person who's trauma dumping and like trying to save the world because they've been so hurt and everything is just so shitty and they feel like shit, and like, you know, fuck all these people who do terrible things, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
there's a line between of having that baseline when you're
Mm.
kind of taking on these roles of being in education or like content creating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like the way that you should kind of look at in sharing your story online, and like the level of vulnerability that you're comfortable with, is maybe just knowing and understanding your audience, who would be on the other side, whether you'd be comfortable telling that to a complete stranger, or when you're talking to your audience online, are you going to talk
Mm-hmm.
to them as if they're one of your closest friends, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, are you okay,
Mm-hmm.
with that tone? There is
Mm-hmm.
this, what you're saying reminds me of this quote. Let me find it. I think it's by Prentice Hill, and I heard it from my girl Brene Brown, who I never shut up about. But with that baseline and making sure that you can help others, while still helping yourself,
Mm-hmm.
there's this quote that Brene Brown shared that says, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." And that's
Mm-hmm.
by someone named Prentice Hill. And I think that with what you were talking about, maybe that's something that is important to keep in mind when you are putting out content or just
Mm-hmm.
sharing anything online, really. Thinking like, okay, is this still something that is this piece of content that I'm sharing, or what I'm sharing with this audience, still within my boundaries for myself, like my self-respect for myself, and at the same time, can this be a loving and productive thing?
And it's also like it's also a cultural thing too, right? Like we're Filipino, and it's like everything that you share in line, like me thinking about my family seeing some of the, like, you know, you've had to make those boundaries where it's like I'm gonna limit who can see certain things. And
Yeah.
like I just feel like there have been times where like I've had family or I've had like people in my life like kind of like bring up things that I've posted and use that against me for, you know, like, oh, blah 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 isn't stable, like what she posts online, it seems like she's not stable or anything like that. And like that was just kind of something I had to learn to let go. And that was also where like when I say like you need to really look at your ego, like really pay attention to what intention you're setting behind posting and sharing what you're sharing on social media. And I'm also like very aware, I'm very aware of like, you know, you have your overnight activists, you know, you have people who will think they're saving the world with a hashtag or like thinking they're saving the world by sharing a post. But it's also just like, what are you doing in real life outside of social media too? Like, how are you showing up for other people and how are you showing up for yourself? Because I didn't want to be, I didn't, I personally just don't want to be lumped into that. I just don't want to be that person who is only active on social media when it comes to advocating for mental health and advocating for just stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like what I post on social media, I want it to be the same way in person, and I want me to show up the same way that I do on social media for other people. You know, because it's so easy for people to open up that conversation and be like, did you see this on social media about like depression or like about what's going on with like suicide and stuff like that? I'm just like, everything on social media, um it's, what's the word, like it's so different than in real life. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
a lot of people think that they're doing the work because they're sharing posts or because they're, and awareness is always good, but I'm always just like, if you're not willing to have these conversations with people, if you're not willing to actually show up in real life, those hashtags, those you know, the things that you're sharing, it's white noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a good point to make because yeah, there's definitely keyboard warriors and there's a lot of performative activism
Mm-hmm.
on social media especially. And I think that what you're talking about kind of reminds me of just like marketing funnel and the way that even, you know, marketing works because in marketing they say that it takes on average 5 to 7 touch points for
Mm-hmm.
someone to go from being aware of a brand to like actually buying from the brand or buying from that business and product. But between like every interaction is a touch point, right? So let's say
Mm-hmm.
they first saw your an ad of your brand or a piece of content on TikTok or whatever. That's touch point number one, and that's them finding out about you. And then
Mm-hmm.
everything in between, like oh, them maybe seeing your brand again at the mall, and you know interacting with an employee, or them seeing
Mm-hmm.
another piece of content, or maybe them like messaging the company. Those are all touch points. And they say that it takes up to 7 or even
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
for from when someone first finds out about you to them actually acting. So
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about to me, it sounds like maybe awareness,
Mm-hmm.
bringing awareness to something on social media. That's touch point number one. But in order
Mm-hmm.
to actually have a tangible, impactful change or
Mm-hmm.
effect, there needs to be other touch points.
Mm-hmm.
You're planting the seed, but you can't just
Mm-hmm.
plant the seed. You
Yeah.
gotta you gotta water it. You gotta give it time. You gotta give it some attention, and you gotta follow through
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to making
Mm-hmm.
a real impact in that field. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you, thank you so much for that. I wanted to ask you, going back a little bit to bringing
Wait,
it back a
I'm
little
gonna turn on
bit.
my light real quick because the
Okay,
sun's so
yeah,
dark.
yeah. She's just talking in the dark. We just see her eyes. You just see
I'm
some teeth in the
back.
dark, like a glowing set of teeth.
Oh, it's like Randall.
Randall from Monsters Inc. Monsters University.
Oh, God.
So I wanted to ask, what going back to bringing back to like mental health and creativity and content creation, um, how in your experience have you found that trauma and mental health affect creativity? Because trauma changes your brain, right?
Mhm,
And so does
mhm,
healing.
mhm.
Um, how do these all connect and go together? You know, how do these things affect your ability to create and be a creative?
Yeah. So I honestly, like creativity, I feel like everyone has it within themselves to be creative. And it's not about painting the perfect picture or about making perfect music. It's about taking what's inside of you and expressing it in whatever form you feel fits or whatever form makes you feel alive. And sometimes with my mental health and creating, I feel like with the depression, it's just like, I'm not good enough. Like, there's no point. You have imposter syndrome where you're just like, there's no point in me creating anything. No one's going to listen. No one's going to want to, just thinking that you're not good enough. And I think that's what would always beat me up growing up was that, when I was a kid, I was like, I love art. I love creating things. I want, that's what I want with my life is to be a part of like, just be a part of art. But then as I got older and I started, going through whatever it was that I was going through, I would start beating myself up. I would start being like, there's no point. Like, who's going to listen to what I have to say? Who's really going to, who's going to tell me I'm good enough, or who's going to tell me, you should be doing this. But at the end of the day, like, it was like looking within myself of being like, I'm the only person who could really find value in what I put out. If you don't find value in what you're creating,
Yeah.
then then that just shows that there's just so much work to be done on the inside. You know what I mean? Like with burnout, with anything, you can't pour from an empty cup. And I could imagine being like a creative and being a person that does I could imagine like what it feels like to be so burnt out and feel like you can't create anything because you're beating yourself up. You know what I mean? But I think it's a matter of balance, and it's a matter of allowing yourself that space, and that it's a true privilege to be able to be expressive and to be creative and to really tune in to what makes you feel alive and what makes you feel connected. And I feel like that's also a part of healing, allowing yourself that space and that freedom to create whatever it is that you want, despite judgment, despite shame, despite guilt, or whatever it was that you've experienced in the past. And I feel like once you find yourself in that realm of freedom and allow yourself to just flow, then everything else will come naturally. Being able to get yourself up out of bed to create and feeling really connected with yourself. Because when I was more active on TikTok and I was a lot more active on my podcast, yeah, there were days where I was like, oh my God, I don't want to get up. I don't want to talk about these things. But once you're actually in that flow and you allow yourself that space, people who are willing to listen and people who are the people who are meant to take in your content will listen and will support you and will know like and will really resonate with what it is that you're creating. It's not a matter of I'm making this for other people, or I'm creating this because I want other people to hear my story, or um I want kind of outcome. And I think one of the things like your program like really taught me was like the intention isn't to just you don't create a brand or you don't create something and then just sell it to everybody. Like your target audience, who would benefit from what it is that you're creating. And I think that was one of the things that I had to learn to let go was like it's one thing to be like, oh, hey, like I started a brand and then just telling your family or telling all of your friends about your brand, but it doesn't resonate with them. Like it's like trying to start a brand and just being like, okay, it's a free for all. Like whoever wants it can take it. I'm going to market to everybody. But being
Mhm.
like, okay, who am I making this for? Who am I creating this for? What is this like? What's my purpose and what's my intention behind what it is that I'm making? And I feel like everything else comes naturally when you can accept that and you could let go of that ego and be like once you let go of what you think success is supposed to look like for you, like everything else just falls into place.
Damn. No, you're just spitting bars at this point. Let's go. No, that's so good. Oh my gosh, there are a couple
And
points in there. Go
like
ahead.
it's not like you and like it's not like I'm like, yeah, I have like thousands of followers and I have all these people who are like so supportive. For me, it's just like I'm like, I know that I haven't been as consistent because of just life and my mental health, but I also give myself grace because I know that I still have it within me to create. Like that part of me is still very active and I still love to create, but you know, there's seasons of life where you're going to be able to show up for yourself the way that you want to, and there are going to be times where you have to put your attention to something else, and like it's okay, you know.
Yeah, no, I've learned to really think about creating not as an activity or as like a task or a verb
Mhm.
that you do, but I really think that creating is a state of mind. It's a
Mhm.
mindset that you're in. It's not
Mhm.
an action that you start and then
Mhm.
finish. It's
Mhm.
something, it's an ongoing state of mind, basically. And I really love that because I think that as content creators and any content creator, anyone who has tried to create
Mhm.
content could probably relate and agree that the most difficult part about content creation, in terms of if you are actually trying to grow or create community, grow a
Mhm.
brand or something with it, and it's just, a little bit more than a hobby, it's
Mhm.
it's showing up consistently. It's
Mhm.
creating
Mhm.
consistently. Um, and I really love that you mentioned I think that it'll speak to a lot of people who struggle with perfectionism. Me,
Mhm.
I struggle with perfectionism so much, but you don't have to be in a perfect state to be able
Mhm.
to create. You don't have
Mhm.
things don't have to align. You don't have to be in a perfect setting. You
Mhm.
have to have like the perfect conditions and like
Mhm.
the perfect mindset and motivation. And sometimes you just got to step in and do it, and then
Mhm.
you'll realize in those moments that that's where the growth happens. And then you'll find
Mhm.
your flow and you'll find, that you just become a stronger creator the more that you
Mhm.
do it. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? Like
Mhm.
there are those days where you want nothing to do with the gym. You don't want to get out of bed. You
Mhm.
don't want to leave your house. But then as soon as you actually push yourself to just show up, and then you start getting your sets in and you start getting your reps in, and then you find that flow and
Mhm.
that motivation. So it sounds like it's a similar thing. I think that's a really great thing to bring up.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, no, what was the other thing you were saying about anyway, I lost. I had something else I wanted to talk about here. You brought up from there, but if I think of it, I'll bring it up back up. But couple last things. Do you have any tips? Speaking of which, on energy management and
Mhm.
like just awareness of your energy and
Mhm.
I guess qualifying yourself as a creative.
Mhm. I feel like it's so crazy because sometimes I'll meet people who rest too much, like me, and then I'll meet people who don't know how to rest, like you. So, like, finding that balance is honestly, I never realized how much balance was so how important balance was. And it's so easy to tell someone, oh, you just need to balance everything, blah, blah, blah. Because there's a lot of, like, when it comes to balance, there are going to be things you have to let go. There are going to be things that you have to take on, and there are going to be things that will challenge you. You know what I mean? And I think as far as like managing your energy levels and managing your mental health while trying to be a creative is all about, what can I give and where can I give it, and what can I take and where can I take it,
Ooh,
and
that's so
I
good.
you can't grow in comfort, and that's my season right now. Like, you cannot grow in comfort, and there are going to be times where I'm exhausted and I just don't want to get up, I don't want to do anything, I don't want to talk. But then I think about all the other times where I had like a really shitty mood or I felt like shit and I still did what I needed to do and how good I felt afterwards. It's just an opportunity to grow. And when it comes to a lot more than often the times I meet people who don't rest, like I come across a lot of people who struggle with being able to slow down because you're in that mindset of like, I need to create, I need to do this, I need to do that. But it always catches up to you. You that burnout will happen, that if you don't know how to manage what it is that you need, whether it be a cup of coffee, whether it be rest, a nap, you have to give yourself that space. You have to give yourself that time to just care about yourself, because you see people who will literally work until they don't know what to do with themselves and all they want to do is sleep. It's like, well, if you gave yourself increments of breaks, gave yourself increments and spaced out what it was that you needed to do, you could do it. And one of the biggest things that, you and I have always talked about in the last couple of years was kind of measuring what can I do when I have low energy, what can I do when I'm like okay, and what can I do when I have the energy to be as productive or be as creative as I want to be, and
Mhm.
laying out what that looks like. Because for me, my top, when I'm at my lowest, like my baseline, when I'm like, when I notice I'm getting really depressed, like I need to make sure I shower, I need to make sure I eat, and I need to make sure I sleep. Like those are the three things that I need to do, my
Your
three
basic
maintenance
human
things.
needs.
Yes, the basic needs I need to do. And then when I'm feeling a little better, can I clean up my space? Can I do something to clear my mind and just make things a little less chaotic around me? You know, it's all about taking that one step in front of you. You know,
Um,
nothing changes if nothing changes. And I remember always reading that when I was a kid, or like really being like it's so easy to read these self-help books, so easy to read these things, but if you're not applying it to your life, if you're not actually challenging yourself to do it, then nothing will change. And it's really hard when you're struggling with a depressive episode, and it's really hard when you feel like you're not worthy of experiencing and being productive or creating what you want to create. But it's a matter of finding that within you to just take that first step in front of you despite feeling like shit. Like it's so easy to say, it's so hard to do, but once you do it, it's just like building blocks, you know what I mean? Like you have to allow yourself that space to change and to grow and like take care of yourself. You know what I mean? And I like to sleep. I like to rest as much as I can because I have so much anxiety when I'm not well rested and when I don't sleep enough. Like I'm a terrible person when I am tired. Like I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be around anybody. So my anxiety is just like you need to sleep. Like sleep as much as you can. But then I find myself depressed and not doing anything.
yeah, you haven't been moving
So
your body or anything.
yeah, and like it was literally when um I started working at a sexual assault center like last year, the one that I used to be at, and I was like, so this is why people drink coffee nonstop. Like it keeps them awake and they could like do what they need to do. But it's just a matter of finding those things that nourish you and keep like give you rest.
Yeah,
So
dude, I feel like you and I are the exact representations of your rest, I'm coffee, or your I'm coffee. Like I'm a
yeah.
terrible person if I haven't had coffee either. It's like
I
it's better for all of us if I will be late and caffeinated because I know it's for the better of everyone, you know.
But you know, it's so bad because I will not show up if I did not sleep. Like
Yeah,
it's
no.
not good. It's not good, and that was something I'm still kind of dealing with right now. Like me trying not to impulsively be like I don't want to go to work. I'm so exhausted. But that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Um.
No, I think it's a really tough balance because, like you said earlier, really easy to say, really easy to understand mentally and agree with, like that makes sense. But then really, really hard to do. It's almost like they're two completely unrelated things, you know? And I think that's the hardest balance to find as a content creator is when do you push yourself, you
Mhm.
know, in moments when you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel like you're in a good space to create. Like, do you only create when you feel like you're in a good
Mhm.
headspace or when you feel like your environment is good? Or do you let yourself take a break and let yourself
Mhm.
take a pause because you're a little bit
Mhm.
overwhelmed, overstimulated, or whatever? Finding that balance, I think, is one of, if not the most difficult part of committing to being a
Mhm.
content creator and
Mhm.
showing up consistently because it's like I think that one, it looks different for everyone. So you can hear
Mhm.
all of this advice, you can hear it works for someone else, but
Mhm.
nobody is living the life that you're living,
Mhm.
experiencing your reality and your conditions and your
Mhm.
mindset and everything that you have to deal with. So it sounds like the best thing to do is to just expect to not have it figured out after you just try once. And it's a process.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
process trying to figure out what works for you and what
Mhm.
doesn't. And that goes in so many ways. So like I'm still trying to find that balance for myself too. I'm like I'm really burnt out, really tired today. Do I push myself to pump out one more thing so that way I could say that I
Mhm.
posted today? Or is it not the end of the world if I don't
Mhm.
skip a day or if I skip a week, you know, because I'm
Yeah.
out or whatever, you know?
As a person who has very low functioning depression, like if I had to learn this like the hard way, was just like if you don't take that step of like creating and doing what you want to do and just like existing, basically life will pass you by. Like life will pass you by, and there's no life in allowing yourself to get in, to allow it, not allowing yourself, there's no life in living at your bed, there's no life in not allowing yourself to create, you know. And
Ugh, that's hard.
like a lot of the times, like especially when I'm like struggling with like imposter syndrome and like dissociation, I'm always just like, well, if I make anything, it doesn't matter because it's not going to be good enough, or like it's just nothing feels real. It doesn't matter whether I do it or not, the world will still go on. But it's just like if I don't do it, the world will still go on. So what would you rather, like, pick, like you said, pick your struggle. Like, would I rather have to deal with the guilt and shame of not pursuing what I wanted and letting life pass me by, or literally fighting through it and trying to create, knowing that that was the least I can do for myself to
Oh,
feel something and to like exist? You know what I mean?
oh my gosh, my heart. Yeah, that hits so.
It was really hard, and I remember, I think I was in therapy a couple of years ago, and like I really, and I think I saw a Billie Eilish interview too, where she was like, I wasted so much time being sad, I wasted so much energy on being upset over the things that happened to me and being so hurt that I missed out on all of the love, all of the art, all of the creativity, all of the amazing things that could have happened for me because I was too busy being sad. And it's hard, you know, like we all know this, like depression, like it's a cloud that you cannot pull yourself out of, and it takes a certain strength, and it takes support, and it takes a whole village, honestly,
Versus.
to
Mm.
get yourself out of that cloudiness. But what I always tell myself is like, you cannot live, uh, there's no life when you're stuck, when you stick yourself in the four walls, like there's no life. And that was something I actively was like, I can't do this anymore, I can't live this way anymore. And you know, like I went through years of being so afraid of, I even struggled with agoraphobia, I wasn't going outside for weeks on end, like it was really hard. But we out here.
Yeah, we are. No, that's the thing is, I think as content creators or anyone that is considering creating content, I think one of the most important things to remember is to remember the joy in creating and prioritize the joy in creating, because it's really, really easy to get lost and stuck in a hamster wheel of like, I gotta pump out content, I gotta post, I gotta make sure that I'm staying consistent. And like, yeah, all of that is necessary strategy to actually create an impact and to grow. But at the heart of it, if you're not enjoying it, then it's like you might as well just get a 9 to 5 that you don't like. Because what's the difference? A 9 to 5 is more stable than
Well,
less
like
volatile mentally than putting your
even if, like if you think about it, we have everything that we need. It's everything is so accessible. Remember, if you ever wanted to be a singer in the early 2000s, are you going to go on American Idol? I don't know, but now we have TikTok, we have Instagram, where like everyone can create, can
yeah.
make what they want to do. Like there are things on TikTok I see, and I'm just like, I have never even thought about people who make traffic signs, like people who, like, just the day in the life of like a baker or something like that. Like there's just people, like we have everything that we need to create whatever it is we want for whoever it is who's meant to see that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just so crazy. I'm just like, you think about it, in the early 2000s, if you wanted to be a singer, are you gonna are you
How
gonna
are you
get
gonna
yourself on
yeah,
American
you gotta go
Idol?
to
Like,
Simon Cowell and get dragged on national television, but you
like
gotta risk
you
that.
used, yeah, you used to have to wait for someone else to tell you you're good enough, and
Yeah.
now we're at that place where it's like, do you have it within yourself to create and to do
You
that
can create
despite?
your own opportunity. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be at the mercy of anyone except maybe the
Mm-hmm.
even
Yeah.
so. It's like you don't have to, that doesn't have to be the definition
Mm-hmm.
of success for you. And
Mm-hmm.
that is such a good freaking point, that the barrier to entry, there's no better time to be a
Mm-hmm.
content creator or to pursue content
Mm-hmm.
creation than now.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, like if you wanted to be not I don't want to encourage like being famous as like a reason that you want to
Mm-hmm.
create content. Definitely content is it's a, content creation is a tool, and social media is
Mm-hmm.
a tool to be able to like impact and get into community with with like minds and,
Mm-hmm.
interact with the people that you want to interact with. But at the same time, it's like, bro, if you ever wanted your own TV show, if you ever wanted to like document your life, like documentary style, or educate or teach other people, you don't have to try to strike up a deal with a
Mm-hmm.
production company to, host on Nat Geo or whatever. Like you said, so you found a TikTok of someone making traffic signs. That's,
Yeah, like there, it's oh my God, that's the thing I love about TikTok.
yeah,
Like, and I was one of those millennials like earlier in the pandemic, like peak quarantine. I was like, I hate TikTok, like all those
yeah.
Gen Z, like all those kids. But then when I actually got on it, and I was like, there are things on there I didn't even know existed. Like, you don't think like this is my everyday life as a cook at a school, or like this is my everyday life as a librarian. Like, you don't think about those things, and it's so nice to have to be able to see real people like actually experiencing the world, and it makes you feel less alone, you know what I mean? And the mental health community is so like the mental health community has done so much for me, honestly. And it's not like I'm like I'm not super active, or like I don't have like whatever, I don't have my like a big base, but it's like what community can do for you, especially online and through social media, is so powerful and so impactful. And I think, like you said, like you could either use it as a tool, or some people use it as harm. But it's like there's just so many people out there who feel alone, and when you get yourself on those communities and you start creating and you start interacting, like you realize like you're not alone, you know? Like
Right.
you can either choose to be lonely, or you just choose your own path, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I
like you
don't.
can use it as for validation, like you said, but
Mhm,
it's also very much a place, a way that you can find community,
mhm, mhm,
regardless of whether you're going viral or
mhm,
not. Like the value
mhm,
of being able to find such specific like minds.
mhm,
I had to admit it, but that clock app is really, really good at
mhm.
pairing you up with
Yeah,
people in
yeah.
similar mindsets. It's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, like I did not think that I would ever be like I would ever see content on like borderline personality, and like on TikTok there's a whole community of like other people who experience what I go through, and like you see them interacting in the world and just like being a part of their communities. And I always think I used to always think like there's no way I'll be able to do what I want to do having a personality disorder. You know, people hear that and they run away.
Oh,
But then
yeah.
being able to see people succeed and see people like thrive in their communities, like it's so encouraging to see. So, and it
Wow.
just like despite having mental illness, despite having anything, like you could create a community, a safe space for other people. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh,
Hmm.
that's so freaking powerful because that also just speaks to the power and the importance of sharing your voice and sharing your story.
Hmm.
You have,
Hmm.
if you have something, a burning desire to share something,
Hmm.
probably a reason for that,
Hmm.
There's probably somebody that could really use your voice, even if a video
Hmm.
only gets a few hundred views or even
Hmm.
like 100 views.
Hmm.
There's been those TikToks and those just like that trend going around of like, what does 100 people in a room look like?
Hmm.
Like if 100 people heard you say what you
Yeah.
said, or yeah, gave you that time, like, would you think that that was nothing? You know, um, have you? Were there any specific instances where you connected with anybody one on one, or somebody reached out to you because of what you shared on your podcast,
Um.
of your social media posts, as a result of you being vulnerable?
Yeah, so I haven't, well, I've had a couple of people like just from around the world like being like, thank you for sharing your story, but it's usually like my friends that I didn't think weren't struggling in real life. Like one of my best friends from college, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder a couple of years ago, and he's now he has his master's in nursing now. And he told me like the only reason, like you're the reason I was able to finally get myself through school, like get myself to keep going, is because I remember
Oh,
you shared your story, and like I just felt like it was also possible. And I didn't even know, like me and him, we were close in college, like we would talk all the time, but I didn't know he was struggling the way that he did, and I didn't know that he was watching my posts or watching my videos um at the time. And I've had like, I've had a couple of like friends and even family reach out to me and say like, I didn't know that this is what you struggled with. I've been struggling with this too. I feel less alone. And like people do not understand, like it's so like loneliness is so powerful and it's so painful, and isolation, like we're humans, like we, no matter what people say, like we thrive in human in interaction and in social settings that are healthy for us, that are good for us. And you don't realize how powerful the content you make or how impactful those things can be for other people. And having people like tell me like, I never thought that anyone would ever be able to understand what I was going through, like I appreciate what it was that you were sharing. And like it always just like
Mhm.
makes me feel, obviously it makes me feel so grateful, and just I express so much gratitude because I'm just like, I know what it feels like to be in such a lonely, dark place, that if I could create, or if I could make some space for another person to feel less lonely, then I've already have done my job, even if it's just one person, you know?
That's so freaking important, because I think
Yeah.
that with the possibility of virality these days, and what TikTok has done is
Mm-hmm.
make it possible for people to become quote unquote, like the average person can become quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote like overnight success or like a
Mm-hmm.
viral sensation. And so I feel like that's where a lot of aspiring content creators and people maybe just starting out and creating content get really tripped up on, is the measure of success for them is whether or not they went viral and whether or not
Yeah.
they hundreds of thousands of followers. But if someone were to go up to you and tell you, just like your friend did to you, like,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to let you know that because of what you've been sharing online, that got me through nursing school, or that got me to where I am today. And
Mm-hmm.
if someone were to tell you that that was the impact that you made on them, and you were the reason why they were able to keep going, or the reason why
Mm-hmm.
they stopped, felt less alone, or stopped shaming themselves for
Mm-hmm.
having something, like a condition like BPD,
Mm-hmm.
would you
Mm-hmm.
tell yourself, or would you tell anyone else that they were unsuccessful or that they failed because they didn't go viral?
Yeah, it's
No.
really, it's crazy because it's like there's so much, it's heartbreaking because there's so much ego when it comes to social media and like posting, and like, there's just so much potential for people to post what they feel genuine, what makes them feel authentic, if they were to let go of like, this needs to get views, like this didn't get views. But
Yeah.
like you said, if you just had one person come up to you, or even 100 people tell you, like they gave you that space and that time to listen to you, then you already know like you've made that impact that you needed. It doesn't have to be on this huge grand scale. Like I would rather have one person, tell me, I genuinely loved your content, I loved that you shared what
You
you shared.
changed the life
Yeah.
path trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. So
And going back to just like with content, your intention with it, one, being able to make connection, being able to potentially impact one person, but then also finding the joy in it. For example, like the post that I made this week about me kind of like teasing that there was an announcement that I had, I creating that video, that little 15-second reel specifically, it was so fun for me because
mm-hmm.
has a lot of content creation that I do for clients and stuff. It
Mm-hmm.
it tends to lean more towards educational,
Mm-hmm.
informational type content, and then I that was just like kind of like a more creative thing that I was able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I remember telling myself, like, all right, regardless of how this performs, or regardless if anyone sees it at all, I had a really fun time putting that together, and
Mm-hmm.
that was so
Mm-hmm.
like refreshing for me creatively. And if you found joy in creating that piece of content or whatever, then that should also in and of itself have value in how that
Yeah.
time is spent. And it's not a waste of time. Anything you enjoy doing is not a waste of time. And
Yeah.
so it's really important as creators
Yeah.
to remember how to enjoy. I keep saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how to enjoy the process and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the creation.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's really such a waste if all your intention was I need to go viral, and then
Mm-hmm.
you put out this piece of content that maybe you didn't even let yourself find joy in creating. It was created out of anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and then it doesn't perform. And then so what are you doing for yourself in this content creation process? Like, what is that even for if during the
That's no way to live. It's no
process?
way to live
Yeah.
looking for the validation of other people. And
Hmm.
like that's just, it's no way to live. And I don't think that there's that's not a it's not a mindset that creativity can thrive in. It's not. So
No.
if you were to like wait for X amount of views, so many, like how many people need to see your content, you're never going to be where you want to be, because if it depends on other people, then that's just not, it's not a sure thing. It's never going to be a sure thing.
You'll never be satisfied. And I don't know if you can speak on this, but for me, I can speak on this as well. Is just like I feel like I actually had more freedom and create fun creating when I was still on my way to get like my first 1,000
Mhm.
followers or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, like I feel like the more followers I got, there was low key like more anxiety that came with it because
Mhm.
there's more of a pressure to kind of like
Mhm.
perform up to that standard of
Mhm.
somebody that has X amount of followers or whatever.
Mhm.
Really, like that shouldn't really impact your process.
Yeah.
If anything, maybe uh, hearing from the community, that can
Mhm.
kind of help you understand like how where the conversation is going
Mhm.
and how things are being received. But it shouldn't. It's easier said than done. One of those things, but
Mhm.
the performance of the content shouldn't impact like your creative mindset
Mhm.
process and
Mhm.
joy in that
Mhm.
process.
Like our ability to create is limitless. There's no
Mhm.
limit. And like you were saying yesterday, like everything started off as an idea, and people who have successfully created, or things, ideas that have came to fruition, no one was thinking, is this going to be successful because other people want it? It's just, I feel like this is meant for the world, and this is what I'm going to put out, and everything else will follow, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, you have a duty to your
Mhm.
creativity and
Mhm.
your ideas because um not to take it to a woo-woo place, whatever though, who
Mhm.
cares? But
Mhm.
there's a reason for it. The
Mhm.
universe puts things inside of you for a reason.
Mhm.
If there's a burning, unexplainable desire to
Mhm.
go in some sort of calling, like who are you to disqualify yourself when that was put in there for a reason by
Yeah,
whoever or whatever.
like living in the moment and seeing where you are now is one of the most important things, because if you're just going to keep waiting to see, like wait until, like you said, wait until a perfect circumstance, wait until things seem like they make sense, then you're just going to keep waiting, because your idea of perfect is always going to change. Your expectations are always going to change,
There's
you
no
know.
such thing as perfect. And that's
Mhm.
like the most head ass or the most like just
Mhm.
arrogant thing for any human to think that
Mhm.
perfection is
Mhm.
achievable because the universe is literally always expanding. Everything is always in
Mhm.
constant evolution. Just the way that the natural world works, there's no work that's ever actually finished. Because perfection basically means it can't be improved upon anymore. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done growing. It's done.
Mhm.
And just by the very nature of how the universe and the natural world works,
Mhm.
like where did this idea of perfection ever come from for us as humans? It's just the most arrogant, like
Mhm.
egotistic standard to
Mhm.
hold yourself up to think that that's even something achievable. And what's more is to think that that's something that you should strive for.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks, girl, for jumping on here and talking about. Oh, there's so many good nuggets. I can't wait to cut up this replay and repurpose some of this shit. But before we go, so I just wanted to ask you to talk about um, what I was talking about that I was going to announce tomorrow or this week is that I am actually going to be officially launching a live group program for anyone that wants to create content or make their content better or do content for their
Yes.
business. And it's my low back.
Oh my gosh. I think.
Um, oh my gosh. Yeah, so I beta tested. You were part of my beta test program earlier this year. And, as a content strategist, I always recommend to my clients who are launching a new content strategy, no matter who you are, even though strategies are tailored, I always recommend
Mhm.
going really hard in the first 30 days and just
Mhm.
getting as much data and staying as consistent as possible and finding your flow for 30
Mhm.
days and then refining from there. So this
Mhm.
program is really um, designed to mirror that because I strongly believe in it. So it's a 30-day program that everyone goes through live as a group, and there's community, and there is question answers or support. And I want to just hear about, if you don't mind sharing, like your experience through it. I know
Mhm.
that within that time you got your first 1,000 followers as well through staying
Mhm.
consistent. So if you don't mind just sharing like a little bit
Mhm.
about your experience with it.
Oh my, I loved your beta program so much. I really loved it because I felt like I was in a space. I felt like I was in a very different space compared to like, I don't know how to explain it. Like I feel like a lot of you gave that component of genuinely coming from a place of care and coming from a place with intention. And I feel like that's something that I was missing with myself because it's so easy to think about the idea of going viral or like creating content, but then like actually being able to slow down and remember like it's not just about going viral. It's not about like the intention to just get all of these views. It's like who do you want to serve, like what audience do you want to interact with and engage with, and like who do you want, you have that power, you have that kind of control. And that was something that I feel like really shifted in my brain, was because a lot of the time when you think about social media, it always feels so dependent on whether people are going to like you or not. Like it feels so dependent on how is the world going to react, like how is everyone else going to react.
Ugh,
But then
yeah.
like being in that program, it was like what can I do? Like, at what capacity am I going to be able to serve myself and serve others and be able to create in that kind of space? And to be around like minded people and to have that kind of community with other people who were learning the same things is just, it's so important, especially being in this day and age now where it just feels like you're just blindly creating content just to create content or because something is aesthetically pleasing. Like I felt like there's something so much deeper. There's a difference between influencing and content creating. That was like the biggest thing that I learned, was that there's a different kind of intention and there's a different kind of process when it comes to content creating for the intention that you're setting, whether it be your brand, your business, your organization, um, and just coming from a place of genuine, like of being genuine and being true to yourself. And that's something I feel like a lot of people are missing, especially in like the social media day and age where there's just so many influencers and coaches who just want to tell you how you can go viral. Like, you want to go viral, this is what program you need to follow. It's like, no, as a creative, who are you on the inside? Like, what can you do and what purpose can you serve in the communities that you want to be a part of? So that was probably my favorite part of the program, was like really feeling like you were a part of something bigger than just yourself, bigger than just wanting to be a person behind the camera to share things for likes and views. It just felt like it came from a place that was meant for longevity and meant to be something that was more than just a season, like something that would last, like just things that you don't really think about, like where am I creating from and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh, that's, oh my gosh, that
Yeah,
is
and then
so,
getting my first like that, like so like that month, it was so fun. Like just thinking about little ways I could create, and I had to let go of that pressure, like you said, like of having perfect content, like being like, oh my god, if I want to go viral, my content needs to look a certain way. But like even my followers know, like I would just post myself looking like I just got out of bed, because I did. Like I would just get up and I would just start talking, and that was just who I am, and that's still who I am. Like I didn't feel obligated to have to like present or perform a certain way. And that was something that was important for me creating content. Like, and I still strongly feel that way, where I'm like, I don't want to perform. Like, I'm not going to be here to perform for other people. And that was something that like was really important for me, to just stay very true to myself and what I wanted to be and how I wanted to, how I wanted to exist, in the social media world.
that's such an important distinction to make. I think that that's a really pivotal mindset to have, is when you go on to social media or you present yourself online with an intention to perform, as if this
Mhm.
is like a theater performance or like a keynote talk or whatever, then that's a
Mhm.
really easy and sure way to burn yourself out
Mhm.
very quickly. It's
Mhm.
not very sustainable. So when you
Mhm.
are aligned with yourself, with
Mhm.
your own intentions, and then you align your content with who you
Mhm.
are as a person, and you're creating from an authentic place,
Mhm.
um, with authentic intention, then
Mhm.
the growth, like the metrics and the things that people
Mhm.
views, the followers, all of that, that becomes a byproduct of you creating from an authentic place and being real yourself and really wanting to serve. We use the words like audience, viewer, but it's at the end of the day, like it's a person. It's a person on the other side, and you should be talking to them the way that you would if they were right in front of your face, you know, or if that was your friend or whatever, not as if you were speaking to like a giant auditorium of people or a boardroom of executives or whatever. And so that part does get really hard to show up authentically, naturally, and you're not going to do it in one day. It's very a process and something you got to practice and something you got to learn. So if you don't mind also me asking, did you feel like it was helpful, because this program was built basically there's a very intentional reason why it's not a self-paced sort of course. It's live weekly workshops with other people who are also wanting to do who want to improve their content and want to take their content seriously. So was it helpful at all to have an actual community of like-minded people that you were learning things with in real time live, but then also able to interact and just communicate with offline, you know, outside of the class and throughout that 30 days?
Yeah, so I feel like I've seen a couple of programs where like they have their communities and they just kind of like talk to each other during the week, but it was I never realized how important it was to have people who were kind of in that same place of like not knowing much about TikTok, not knowing much about what we wanted out of it and kind of figuring it out together. And also just being around different kinds of creatives where their content was completely different from mine was also really cool to see. And just feel like it, not that it felt leveled, it just felt like a place where it was safe to ask questions and it was safe to be able to figure out, you know, what worked and what didn't work and what did I enjoy and what did I not enjoy, what did you enjoy, what did I not enjoy, and be able to have those conversations. Because I feel like if I were to do this on my own, if I were to go through that program on my own where there weren't any lives or there wasn't any community, it's so easy to just kind of fall off or to feel like I'm not doing what I need to do, because there was a lot of support. There was a lot of like, you know, like a lot of wanting the best for each other and a lot of wanting to make sure that everyone was on like that same wavelength of like wanting to succeed in whatever we thought success was and create whatever it was that we wanted to create. And I also got to learn a lot about different fields, like a
Yeah.
lot of different kinds of creatives who are in like in the fitness industry, a lot of people who are more in like art, more into, you know, like the food industry and stuff like that. So it was really different. It was really cool to be able to meet like different, it wasn't just a very specific kind of content creator. Everyone was very different and I really appreciated that like diversity, you know.
I think my favorite part was watching how everyone just related to each other, even though there were so many different backgrounds. It's like so many different industries that have nothing to do with each other. But at the end of the day, since we're all human, we all have the very similar struggles and very similar limiting beliefs when it comes to putting yourself out there and when it comes to creating content. And I think the only thing really worse than feeling lost and confused is feeling lost, confused, and alone and being the only one that feels that way. So even if, you know, you feel lost and you don't really know what you're doing, at least you're going through it with other people who are experiencing a similar thing or the similar feelings, and then you are all sort of just figuring it out together. And of course I'm there to help as much as I can. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching like that sense of community come together because everyone was strangers going into it.
Yeah.
For the most part. So yeah, a lot can happen in 30 days.
A lot could happen in 30 days. And like, I'm really glad that I stuck with that, because I did not ever think, even if it was, I did not think I would ever get like 1K on like on TikTok. Cause like, I was just so like, I was not consistent. I didn't feel like anyone would be interested in anything I had to say. But, you know, like we said before, like your audience are like the people who are meant to be a part of your community and who are really meant to be, you know, who are really meant to benefit from what it is that you have to say will like find their way to you, you know?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I'm
Thank
so
you.
happy
I'm
that
so excited. I'm
you're
so excited for you. like I always tell everyone, I tell everyone, I'm always just like, people don't know like how valuable it is to be able to have a conversation with you, like especially when it comes to like digital creation, digital like content creation or anything. Like I'm just like, there's so much value, and you give so much free value too, like even with your like your Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, like there's just so much value to what you put out. And I'm so excited to see, you know, the people, the group you're going to be working with, and like their successes and stuff like that. And I just know it's going to be really great, because I really do believe, and I do see you being like one, I don't know, I just see you being like one of those, what's the word, just I really see you succeeding in this, you know what I mean? Like so many people need what you offer. And I think there's just something so different about working with the intention of being human and being genuine and coming from a place of intent, rather than just being like, we need to go viral, how are we going to do it, you know what I mean? So
Oh my gosh, my heart, you gonna make me cry. Stop.
of course, you
Thank
know,
you
I'm
so much.
always here to
I
hype
love
you up.
you.
I'm always here. I
I
love you too.
I really appreciate the support and your thoughts and the time that you gave to just show us how to be vulnerable, because you don't just
Mhm.
talk about it, you are about it. So um,
Mhm.
everyone, please
I
go. I always
appreciate it very
recommend
much.
Rachel's podcast, the Inner Rage podcast on Spotify or anywhere that you get your podcast. I get sad when there's no new podcast episodes because
Oh my
I
gosh,
listen
yeah, I
to it
have.
while I do my makeup. It's fine. I'm not shaming
Yeah.
you,
No,
but no, your voice is so
I'm
important.
definitely gonna find myself again, or find that time again to be able to create. Um, but yeah, that we're
Like
just
you
in
said,
a
we have our
season of change
seasons.
right now, so.
It's seasons. Yeah, you're in when
Mhm.
you're in a transitional phase or transitional
Mhm.
season.
Mhm.
It's sometimes very necessary to put a
Mhm.
pause. It's not stopping, it's just putting a pause so that way you can get
Mhm.
reoriented and then maybe recreate a system or process. It's
Mhm.
just something that we talk a lot about is
Mhm.
a process that works for
Mhm.
you, in that
Mhm.
season. So I'm so glad that you're a part of it, and I'm so glad that you benefited
Mhm.
from it. And that's really all I want. I felt I really felt like I needed to create this program, because before that I was only really serving brands or helping out brands and businesses, and there are just so many talented individuals
Mhm.
and passionate individuals that I know that could
Mhm.
really thrive from getting
Mhm.
the message out there and make huge impacts just by
Mhm.
literally showing up. And so
Mhm.
um, it's really all just about consistency and
Mhm.
intention, and
Mhm.
like knowing yourself too,
Mhm.
and being real to yourself. So you
Mhm.
literally like just it was how amazing it was for me to have my best friend in such an important project for me, or something that I just feel like I really needed to put out there. I appreciate that so much. So
Of
thank you
course.
again. I
Thank
know
you.
that I've been having you talk here for a minute, so I'm gonna let you have a break, let your vocal cords rest. But I love you, and
I
thank
love
you
you
so
too. Okay,
much.
thank you. Bye,
All right,
everyone. Thank you
night,
for tuning in.
y'all. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Happy Friday. Drink
Happy
lots of water.
Friday.
Don't drink and drive.
Bye.
Take an Uber.
Okay, bye.